Hey everyone. Have you ever wondered if how smart you are actually affects your love life?
Hmm.
I mean, I'm talking not street smarts, right? But like actual intelligence?
Yeah, yeah. No, I get what you mean.
Like does being good at I don't know, puzzles or whatever
Mhm.
actually translate to being good at relationships,
Right.
which is just wild to even think about.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to unpack that today
Yeah.
in this deep dive.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, I'm into it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
interesting. Like we always hear about, oh, intelligence is important for, getting good grades and getting a good job.
Sure.
But nobody ever really talks about if it helps you find love.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny you bring that up because it's actually a pretty new area of research.
Oh, really?
Like we're only really starting to understand how all that connects. We
Yeah.
know intelligence is linked to success in other areas, like we were saying, like your job and stuff.
Right.
But romantic outcomes, totally different story. Like we just don't have that much research on it yet.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And you would think
Yeah.
they'd be connected somehow.
Well, and what's funny is way back when they actually did studies that showed higher intelligence was actually like negatively linked to divorce.
Oh, wow.
So it's like it's kind of all over the place. We're not really sure yet.
Wow. Okay, well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So to get into all of that,
Okay.
we're looking at two new research studies today.
Awesome.
And they both use really strong data. This
Mhm.
isn't just asking people on the street,
Right.
hey, do you think you're smart and also in love?
Are you dating someone smarter than
Yeah,
you?
exactly. This
Yeah.
is legit peer-reviewed scientific stuff.
Good.
We're talking heterosexual men. They used established psychological assessments,
Oh, good.
like the real deal.
That's good. Yeah, because then we can actually like really dig in and
Yeah.
see what the data says.
Exactly.
So are you ready to get into it?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. So study number 1.
Okay.
244 men.
Okay.
They all took this thing called the ICAR,
Okay.
which is like, have you heard of this?
I have heard of this.
The Intelligence and Cognitive Abilities Research Battery. It's basically like a really well-respected intelligence test.
Yes.
It covers a bunch of different cognitive skills, not just like,
Right. It's not just like an IQ.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It breaks it down.
okay, so the researchers weren't just looking at like the overall IQ score, right?
Okay.
They were trying to see if there were like connections between specific parts of that like the intelligence profile
Okay.
and like how those guys acted in their relationships.
I see.
And get this, the guys who scored higher on the ICAR
Yeah.
were less likely
Less likely.
to insult their partners.
Wow. Really?
I know.
Interesting.
So like being able to solve like, I don't know, a tough Sudoku.
Means you're less likely to call your partner a jerk.
Yeah, like you think about those like arguments you get in, you're
Yeah.
like, man, I wish I didn't say that.
Exactly.
Like maybe there's a connection there.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like the verbal stuff either.
Right.
They also found that the guys with the higher ICAR scores less likely to pressure their partners into sex
Oh, wow.
or try to control them in like other ways, like
What? Give me an example.
like all the kind of like manipulative things that people do, like making someone feel guilty or like giving the silent treatment, like all those little games.
Yeah.
So the study found that the guys with higher ICAR scores, they were less likely to do that kind of stuff.
Okay, so are we saying that smart guys are just above all that?
Well, no. It's not about like judging anybody or saying one way of being is better or whatever.
Okay.
It's about seeing the connections in the data, right? Like remember, this is correlation, not causation.
Right.
Just because there's a link
Yeah.
doesn't mean one thing causes the other.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
But what is really interesting is that this finding, this link between the higher ICAR scores and, being like a more decent partner,
Mhm.
it could point to a connection between intelligence and emotional regulation.
Ooh. Okay, hold on. I think I'm going to need a little help with that one. What is emotional regulation and why does it matter for relationships?
Yeah, so emotional regulation, it's basically like, how sometimes you just want to like totally lose it,
Oh, yeah.
but you don't. Emotional regulation is like being able to do that, like being able to chill, even when you're stressed or angry or whatever.
Okay, so it's instead of yelling at your partner, you take a breath.
Exactly.
You're like, okay, what's actually going on here?
Right, and how can I like deal with this like calmly and, reasonably?
Right.
So yeah, it's basically like being the boss of your own emotions.
Which, let's be honest, is like really hard sometimes.
No, yeah,
Just
yeah,
like even I
yeah.
I could use some help with that for sure.
And that's where like the whole intelligence thing might come in.
All right.
The researchers are basically saying that like maybe those higher level thinking skills,
Mm-hmm.
they could also help with self-control,
Okay.
which obviously is really important in relationships because
Right.
you're always going to have those like moments where you have to like keep your cool.
Right, for sure. So it's not like being a genius
Right.
necessarily. It's
Yeah.
more like having that mental agility to navigate those like emotionally charged moments.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really is like relationship superpowers.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. But you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that it wasn't just like any kind of intelligence, right?
Right.
It was like something specific on that ICAR test
Right.
that really jumped out. So like, what was it? What is the magic sauce here? So like, what kind of intelligence are we talking about? Like, is it like being good at math or something?
Well, not quite. Remember those like different sections of the ICAR we were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out one specific type of question
Yeah.
kept popping up as like really connected to those like better relationship behaviors,
Okay.
letter and number series.
Okay. So like those are those ones where it's like 2, 4, 8, 16.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And you got to figure out the pattern.
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all about recognizing patterns and being able to, think flexibly.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And those skills, the researchers are saying, seem to like translate surprisingly well to relationships.
That makes so much sense though, because it's like, if you can spot patterns in how your partner's acting or like, if something's not working, you can adjust,
Yeah,
be a little bit flexible.
exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, like thinking on your feet during an argument, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like that's all about recognizing patterns and being adaptable.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe we can actually get better at relationships. Like if we can, work out our brain in other ways,
Yeah.
why not our relationship brain too?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a good point. Why not?
Okay, what about study number 2?
Okay, so study number 2.
Did they find the same thing?
This one's interesting.
Okay.
So this one was smaller, only 66 men.
Okay.
And instead of the ICAR, they used something called the Raven's Progressive Matrices.
The what?
The Raven's Progressive Matrices.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, so it's not as common,
Okay.
but basically it's all about visual problem solving. So think of it like, those puzzles where you have to figure out like what shape or pattern comes next in the sequence.
Okay.
So it's a totally different way of measuring like cognitive ability than the ICAR.
Okay. So did the guys who like aced this Ravens test, did they also, not call their partners names? Were they good communicators? Like what happened?
Okay, so here's the curveball.
Okay.
They didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this time around, no real link between the intelligence scores on the Ravens test and those like relationship factors they looked at in the first study.
Wow. So it really is maybe like a specific type of intelligence that makes a difference.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like those letter and number series skills, the ones that are all about, like you said, pattern recognition, flexible thinking,
Hmm.
those might be the ones that are really key for navigating all the like ups and downs of a relationship.
Right. And who knows? Maybe there are other types of intelligence that also matter that we just haven't even like thought about testing yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about this research is that it opens up so many more questions,
Totally. And like, what about women? Does this hold true for women?
Totally.
Or like, what about different relationship styles?
Right.
I mean, there's so much more to look into.
Absolutely. Like this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Totally.
Yeah.
But even just knowing like what we know now, it's still pretty wild to think about like all those times, I was like doing a crossword puzzle or something. I was like,
Yeah.
actually, low-key becoming a better partner.
Right. Exactly. Like who knew? Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's like those skills that we often think of as being just for, academics or like logic puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
they could actually be like secretly shaping our love lives in ways that we never even realized.
I love that. It's like they're not just for winning trivia night.
Right. Exactly.
They're actually like giving us a leg up in one of the most important parts of life.
Totally.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this was amazing.
This was fun.
I feel like, I don't know, we could do a Sudoku now, see if I can,
Get those relationships.
up my game a little bit.
Get those relationship games.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much for doing this deep dive with me today. This was amazing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
And to everyone listening, we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.